Shabbat Shalom and Good Yantiv. Two important things happened in one weekend in the summer of 2014, the summer before my retirement as Bethel's senior rabbi. On the Sunday of that weekend, there was the wedding of our son Mark to Karen. I hope they're watching tonight. That produced one of the best days of our lives and a ton of great memories, and lately, our gorgeous granddaughter, Josie. But on the day before the Shabbat, we were in Woodstock, of all places. We went to shul, and we watched as their retiring rabbi barked suggestions and corrections from the front row for his successor on the bima. It was immediately clear to me that I didn't want to be like that retiring rabbi, and so I vowed to make space for my successors here, and I think I've done that, keeping appropriate distance, showing up on occasion, focusing on my little shul in Warrenton. I also told anyone who would listen that on these high holidays, the biggest days of the year, I would really make space for my successors and would not show up at all for 5 years. It's 5. And here I am for what was always a regular part of my rabbinate here, the Erev Rosh Hashanah brief sermon, and Greg asked me to do a reprise. But I could not have predicted that I would be forgotten so fast, that I would be looking out at the congregation tonight and see that you don't need a TI-83 to count the number of people who show up to hear me talk. There are a lot of things we cannot predict. If we think we know how our lives will play out, we are usually wrong. For me, at least, there was no way of predicting where and what my years would be. For me, I was supposed to be teaching Bible at Haverford College. That did not happen, but of all things, my son Mark is a Haverford alum. For me, there has been so much to be grateful for, some hiccups, some drama, some unpredictability, like the thousands of bike rides, despite my folks not allowing me to have a bike because a relative had an accident on one. And most of us can tell similar stories of the accidents of history that determine who we ended up spending our lives with and how we came to live here and be together in this community. We really don't know how life will play itself out. And we have had that truth reinforced during this pandemic in so many ways that I still think we look at what is going on around us with disbelief. I could take the whole night to recount all the ways our lives have changed since March, just a half year ago, but with enough change for a lifetime. I will spare you that. Most everything has been said already, and most everyone has said it. But the reality of our lives at this so very challenging time has to be what most people in my position will be discussing these holy days. Not so much, I think, the usual high holiday works of teshuvah, how we become better people. We can all work on that, but it seems secondary this time around. And just this afternoon, I read one rabbi talking about the year now concluding, who said, maybe this time God owes us an apology. Last week, I asked my Gray Panthers, that's one of our many adult study groups, mostly retired congregants, formed as part of our CE21 effort some time back. I asked them what they would talk about if they were asked to give this high holiday sermon. You would think they would be awed by the challenge, but no. Dealing with our president and the everyday evil that he produces or foments got a number of hits. But there were more who said that they favored giving the congregation a respite from all that angst and talking about what Judaism teaches us about sustaining hope at very difficult times. We are a people who has way too much experience dealing with difficult times. How did we retain enough hope to survive? So I think it helps to identify what is stressing us out before we can talk about hope, not to mention reducing our stress. I do note that the stress is real. The Post had a headline September 8th. The headline was 53%. As in, U.S. adults struggling with mental health issues linked to worry and stress over the virus has increased from 32% in March to 53% in July. Those experienced symptoms of anxiety or depression, 11% a year ago, 40% now. 13% have increased alcohol or drug use. 25% of those aged 18 to 24 seriously have considered suicide in the past month. Imagine 1 of 4 seriously considering taking their own lives in the face of what they see in the world around them. So I bet our numbers in the Bethesda bubble would be lower. We are the lucky ones who mostly don't have to deal with the worst pandemic effects like job loss and economic worries. And if we don't have little ones doing homeschooling and bored 3 seconds after our latest well-thought-out activity, none of that for most of us. It's mostly fear of the virus itself, even if our odds of avoiding it seem good. But are we stress-free? No way. My dentist, who treats people like you and me, has seen more broken teeth in the few months that his practice reopened compared to as long as he can remember. And the Post wrote about that just a few days back. We are clenching and we are grinding. So what is our stress and what does Judaism offer that we can use to make it better? I think the stress comes from many directions, but I want to focus on 2 that I think will resonate. One is dealing with uncertainty, and tonight I will talk about that. Tomorrow, as part of the Kol HaNeshama service, Gail and I will talk about and share some of your stories about living a pandemic-era life that means facing a second stress factor where we have choices to make, but none of the choices are any good. Uncertainty, no good choices, those are 2 big issues for all of us. Dealing with uncertainty, that's what I'll do tonight. Uncertainty turns out to often be worse than reality. Many of you know that I faced some formidable health issues in the last 2 years. All along the way with a zillion tests and then radiation, a big surgery, half a year of a 3-drug chemo. The most difficult times as I look back were when we did not know what would happen next. What would the scan say? When would we get the results? What would the treatment be? When would we know if it was working? Or would we ever know? But once we knew what was going to happen at each stage, once we had clarification of what was next, somehow it got much more bearable. And I am doing great, thank God, and thank to you for all your support. I think uncertainty fits our current pandemic situation in so many ways. When will life return to normal, or will it ever? When will we be able to relax at a restaurant, or a movie theater, or a barber shop, or a ball game? When can we go to shul or sit packed together in our sukkah? When will our kids get on a school bus and have a normal school day? When will we get on a metro train and have a normal work day? And you notice that I omit all the uncertainties about this oh-so-critical upcoming election and when we might actually know the results. All this is very stressful for all of us, I think, and I think we feel it every day, maybe almost every wakeful hour. I think I don't need to say more. So, is there anything to say that would be helpful in the face of all this uncertainty? Over these 10 days, rabbis here and elsewhere will try to answer questions like this. I hoped at least to provide a framework for the discussion. But I know you won't let me off with just that, just raising the question and not trying to answer it. So let's try one of the most famous 3-word expressions in all of Jewish tradition, Gam ze ya'avor. This too will pass. It's not going to be like this forever. It seems so simple, but it's true. We have toilet paper. But let's be serious. Over the ages, our people has faced disasters and crises and times where there seemed no hope, and yet here we are. The crises passed. We have risen from the ashes time and time again, sometimes changed in big ways, like the development of the synagogue when the destroyed temple was not going to be rebuilt, and the sacrificial cult not going to be restored, or the start of the Third Commonwealth, that's the state of Israel, after the horrors of the Holocaust. Sometimes the changes were smaller, like the development of different denominations when Orthodoxy in America was failing to reach most Jews. Regardless, Gam ze ya'avor, this too will pass. The crises and bad times did pass. Not everything was the same moving forward, and it will not be after this pandemic. But families were started and homes were built and new and different ways of creating community developed. Gam ze ya'avor. But friends, it would be a mistake, and here's where I'm reaching my conclusion, it would be a mistake to treat this with passivity, just waiting for this crisis to pass and for life to return to something resembling normal. We are not of the school of the evangelist Oral Roberts, who preached that a miracle is coming our way. There were a few miracles, but the crises that passed usually passed from a combination of luck and action, not just sitting around waiting for the new day, but helping to make it happen. That is our challenge now, too, to keep up our hope with the knowledge that this too will pass, but in the meantime to help it pass, beginning with wearing masks and social distancing, and to think creatively about the new kind of order we can help build, one that includes justice for all, and air we can breathe, and more. Then this so challenging time will be remembered not just for the terrible losses that it produced, but for the seeds that we planted during this time to make a new and beautiful new order. So may it be. Amen.